Hey everybody, and welcome back to The Creative Collector. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I prep my large models that I print. A lot of people have been asking what specific things do I do that might be different from a smaller model. So I'm going to show you what steps I take before I paint my model. You may pick up a few things differently that I do that you might want to incorporate in prepping your models. And I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use that help make my job a little easier. And remember, if you like the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button for me. Leave a few comments after you watch the video. Let me know what you think. All right, so let's get started. So let's assume that you got some prints fresh off the printer and you need to wash and cure them. Let's go over my process and I'll suggest a couple of things that you're going to need to start out. So first things first, I like to get set up in a little area here where I can set up my little plastic tub here that I can fill with denatured alcohol. That's what I use. You could use IPA if you'd like. And then I like to get these little lunch trays here. These things come in super handy. Put a couple of paper towels in there so it'll soak up some of the alcohol, and they're sturdy and you can move them around and capture all that stuff in there. But I like to have these side by side to start me out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some chemical resistant gloves. These are a thick 10 mil right here. And then I'm also going to get some eye protection because this alcohol will splash around a little bit. And then I'll get a respirator, or at a minimum I'll get one of these masks right here. That way I'm not inhaling all of this alcoholic fumes. So now I put a few pieces in the tub here to soak a little bit in the alcohol, and you don't have to have a lot in there. I just have it in probably about a third of the way full, but I'm actually going to use the toothbrush here to go in and scrub some of these parts and make sure we get all that residue off. And I'm going to transfer them over here and let them start drying. All right, so one thing to keep in mind is I do take my supports off before I put them in alcohol. And the reason I do that is because if you leave the supports on, your alcohol is going to get a lot dirtier a lot quicker. So I always tend to take mine off. It's a matter of preference. There's no right or wrong way. So if you want your alcohol to last a little longer, you might consider doing that. I know a lot of people soak them in hot water and all that stuff, but with my settings, I don't need to do that. The supports practically fall off in a lot of cases. Some of them are tough to get off, but I usually don't have any problem with supports coming off. So something to keep in mind. Back to it. So once I get all of the parts cleaned, I usually let them sit for a minimum of 3 to 4 hours before I start to cure them. So I use the tub because I don't have a big enough wash station to put these extra large parts in there. And plus I like a little bit of room, that way I can actually get the toothbrush in there and agitate them a little bit. And if you have a wash station big enough for these pieces, then sometimes just swirling it around doesn't always get everything out of those cracks and crevices, and all of those textures tend to get lost. What I find out is that when you use the toothbrush to actually get that excess residue off, or sometimes it's just a film, then all the textures and everything underneath just really tend to pop out. Now the next thing is, what are you going to cure these parts in? Let me show you here. So in previous videos I showed you how I made this tub right here. Very cheap $5 tub. Cut a hole in the center here that I can actually put my UV light overs just like that. And then what I did on the inside here was I lined it with aluminum foil, just taped it up there. And I've seen people make these boxes and they have like UV curing lights, like the little small string lights. You could do that too, but this has been plenty enough for me, and I got enough depth and width and everything like that so I could put large parts in there and just simply cure them. It does take a tad longer. You're not going to cure a part really fully in probably 3 to 5 minutes anyway, in my opinion, but I usually typically leave them in there for like 10 to 15 minutes. Don't always believe that if you leave them in there super long, then the parts are going to get brittle and break and all that good stuff. I've actually goofed before and left one of these pieces in here, or a few pieces in here, for multiple days with this thing on. So, and they still turned out just fine. So a few tools that I like to use whenever I'm prepping my pieces are simple things that you could find in my affiliate links below. A couple of things that I use is I use this little tool thing right here that's almost like a Dremel. It's actually USB powered. This thing is lightweight. I hold it basically just like a pencil, and I'm able to get in a lot of those little divots and stuff on the where the supports once were and everything. And it also helps get in some of those cracks and crevices with the extra accessories that'll attach to it. The other thing I like to use are these little glasses here, these little magnifying glasses that have a light on them. There's different lenses that you can get with them, and again, helps me get up close and look at details and stuff, find out what I want to sand down or what needs prepping or anything like that. And this also helps with painting. These things are like 20 bucks, and again, there's also an affiliate link for these below. And last but not least is the G-Tool. There were a few of these things the other day on Amazon. Don't know if they're still on there or not. These things are about $25, $30. I use this as a polisher, not a sander. Actually helps with smooth surfaces, and after I get all my sanding done, it helps get a lot of those abrasive lines and stuff like that out. So if you could find one of these and pick these up, these things are awesome to use. So here we have a part that has been cured and is ready for prep. And as you can see, there are a lot of areas where these support bumps are, and we're actually going to use this little tool here to get those off. I'm using this rounded pointed grinder tip right here, and this allows me to pinpoint on the areas right here in order to sand those down without going into a lot of these textures. As you can see, there's a lot of fabric textures in this boot here, and if you have this here, this will help you eliminate sanding all of that texture away and focus in on these little areas. All right, so here we go. And if you have parts like this that are basically smooth and you have little bumps like this, you could just take a little bit of sandpaper on this and sand this off right here. And this is where your G-Tool really comes into play. This will actually help smooth those areas even further and get rid of these abrasive sanding lines. And because this is a smooth surface, it'll also help you smooth them out even further, and any type of layer shifting that you may have will help eliminate some of that. And if you have major textures like this, where you see some of those support bumps really coming through, and you don't want to take the tedious task of taking the multi-tool and grinding these down individually, this will actually help polish some of that down a little bit pretty evenly, rather than getting sandpaper in and just gouging areas out. And as long as you're not putting an incredible amount of pressure on it, it will actually get it even back down to the level of the textures itself. And it's not perfect, but at least you're not losing every bit of that texture in there. If you take some time, it'll actually turn out pretty good. So let's say, for the sake of time here, you have all of your pieces prepped, sanded, polished, and ready for gluing. The one thing that I like to use better than super glue, especially in larger pieces, is this right here from BSI. It is a 2-part 5-minute epoxy. They also make it in 15-minute, but this gives me plenty of work time. It's pretty much an even type of distribution between the two composites here, the hardener and the resin. And I'll actually just use a little bit of here, dab a little bit on there, mix it up real good, and this is what I use to glue these parts together, and it holds forever. But super glue over time actually goes away. It starts to fail, parts just start to come off and break. But this stuff right here is an epoxy resin, and it will last you for a very, very long time, or the life of the model. And so I'm just going to gloop it on here pretty good. Get a nice even coat here, and then this is just going to go on the model, and then I'll hold it for a minute or so, let it grab, and if I have like any glue to seep out or whatever, I'll just wipe it away here. So another thing that I like to do, and it's a must, is I like to dry fit my parts together once I have them all prepped and sanded. Everything just goes together really well, and that way whenever I get ready to finally glue them all together, then I don't have any issues. And keep in mind, if you're painting parts individually, there may be some tightness when you're actually putting these pieces together, because paint layers do add density to the model itself, so it may not fit together. So keep that in mind. So once I do that, the last thing I'm going to do before I primer is I'm actually going to dust my models off really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break everything back down, and then we're going to dust everything and make sure that we got all the dust out of here before we start to put primer on it. So whenever I'm dusting my pieces off, I like to use two types of brushes. I like to use a stiff brush like this one here, and then I like to use one of these larger makeup brushes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in where I know that I've sanded, in the cracks and crevices, and try to get out all of this dust that you probably really can't see. And this is where your magnifying glasses really come into play. That will actually help you see some of that stuff that you might not see to the naked eye. And in places like this where I've sanded really well, again, I want to go in and make sure all of this is removed. That way, whenever I decide to add primer to it, I don't have a lot of trash, a lot of dirt and dust up underneath the primer, and it looks really smooth when going on. And then once I got everything back dry fitted together, it's time to start adding some primer to it. Now this one here, I am still waiting for a few pieces to print, but you get the idea. And of course, once you have that first coat of primer on it, it may be necessary to go back and look at some areas that you might have missed on, do a little bit of sanding, a little bit of tweaking, and add another coat. That is why it's important when you've put that first coat of primer on there, don't goop it on. Put a light coat on there, and it becomes a little bit more visible what you need to fix next. All right, everybody, so I hope that helped you out in prepping your larger prints. I want to thank all you guys for supporting the channel, and I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon. And we got a few members this week. Let's see who it is. Brian Stancliffe, Cyber Hobbit, The Salt Trader, David Hartman, Tim Long, Michael Paul Minnick, Turk, just good old Turk, and Glenn Green. Thank you guys so much for becoming the newest members of the Patreon. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Patreon, a link is below in the description. Helps me continue in making these videos. And we also have the model of the month that we're a little bit behind on this month, but we just released our newest one, which was Punisher War Journal, Punisher versus Wolverine. We got some G.I. Joes coming up for you very soon. So you might want to take advantage of getting into the Patreon. And in my Patreon, we also have a private Discord where we discuss everything 3D printing and painting and whatever else we want to talk about. But again, thank you so much for watching the video. You can simply support the channel just by watching the next video. And as you can see, guys, I've got a few models here I've got to finish up. So until the next video, everybody, stay safe out there. Print, paint, repeat. And until the next video, we'll see you. I wonder if anybody ever did a Henry Cavill Superman with the Witcher head. Interesting.